Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are author Julie Orlov and composer Miguel de Oliviera. Julie Orlov is a psychotherapist and leadership consultant who grew up in Los Angeles, went to University High School, earned a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology at UCLA, a Master's of Social Work at USC, and a Master's of Organizational Leadership from Chapman University. Lots and lots of degrees here. After more than 20 years of helping people develop relationships that work, she put all of that advice into a book. Why did it take so long?
I wanted to make sure it was the right book with the right information at the right time. And that's what came.
How did you write it?
You know, I have been working with people for so long and have been playing with very different ideas about how do you approach relationships, how do you help couples navigate their relationships, how do you help them work through their issues. And in conjunction with my own life,
right?
And my own experiences with relationships and my friends and family. So I was waiting just to see, what was the right formula that would help people that's different than what's out there.
Because there are a lot of self-help books. There are a lot of psychological paths to take to relationships, right? Then why did you think yours would be different?
Because my book really focuses on the relationship. What it does is it focuses on the nature of relationships.
You mean like the two of us sitting together?
Yeah, I mean, every relationship has a very predictable developmental path. And when you understand what that is, you can say, oh, you know what? I'm not crazy. You're not crazy. What's going on is now we're dealing with phase 2. That's what's happening. You
have 4 phases that you face in this, right?
Right.
So go on.
So when you know the phase that you're in and what's expected, to experience in that phase, then you at least have a roadmap. You can say, okay, this is what's going on. Here are the opportunities, because relationships really are here to mirror what we need to see about ourselves.
When I say how long did it take you to write it, do we say 20 years because that's how long you've been working? Or how long did it actually take you to write it physically?
It was percolating for about, I would say, a year and a half. In fact, I was getting nervous because I felt like, okay, I got writer's block.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was seriously percolating. But then when it all came together, honestly, within 45 minutes, the entire book was outlined.
You could because you knew just what you were going to do.
I knew exactly
how it was coming together. What method did you use? Did you use a computer, or had you made an outline, or what did you do?
I would say initially, it was on pad paper, on one of those
I know, that's great.
I love the yellow legal pad. Doesn't everybody still love the yellow pad?
They do. They still talk about it.
So it went from that, and then eventually it worked its way onto the computer, and then it worked there. Yeah.
Did you use your patients as examples?
What I did is I pulled all of patients' friends. I pulled a lot of things together. The 4 stories that are in the book are actually based on fictional characters, so they're composites.
They are. Okay, because I was going to ask that if a person could recognize themselves from what you had written.
Yes, you will recognize yourself in at least one of the stories.
Oh, you'll recognize yourself because you've made this composite. What I meant was from the real patient, they couldn't recognize themselves.
No. I respect their privacy. I wouldn't want to go quite that far.
So were you taking examples from everything that you were doing with the individual work?
Here's the thing. There are many different issues that come up, but there's really a specific finite set of dynamics between two people.
Okay, what would those be? Because I think you give those examples, so let's talk about them a little bit.
All right, so if we look at the storyline number 1, there's Sue and Joe. okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Sue meets Joe at a conference, and she's really excited, and she gets home, and she's hoping he calls, and then he calls, and they go out a few times.
Yeah, right.
So you know the story.
I read this story, yes.
Right,
Go
right.
on, okay.
So the woman is very excited about Joe, and Joe's very busy at work, and at one point in this new relationship, he doesn't return a call or doesn't return an email soon enough, and then Sue, her imagination, gets a hold of her, and she's decided that, he's not available, he doesn't care about her, he's not reliable, she can't trust him. She's making all kinds of things up over this one behavior. All kinds of judgments,
right? Over this one behavior.
Right,
okay.
Because it's stirring her stuff up.
So is this phase one?
This is phase one.
Okay.
We get a lot of things stirred up in phase one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then where does she go from there?
So Sue has to make a decision, and what she does is she tries to get a hold of her reactivity, because we've all been there where we're anxious and we want to do something to take care of the anxiety, and in her case she wanted then to chase after Joe,
right,
to get reassured,
right,
which people do. And then Joe, on the other hand, has his own issues of being enmeshed and taken over. So his reaction is like, you've just got to be kidding, this woman's a lunatic. And he goes away and never calls her back, and the relationship never even has a chance
and that's
to go for it.
So what should she have done?
What should she have done is worked to contain her anxiety in a different way. And that is to go talk to her friends or go talk to someone that she trusts, for her to understand what was triggering all that reactivity.
But should she talk to her friends about going with Joe? Or not? She just talk about why she's...
talk about why is she so anxious. And otherwise, at this point, it has nothing to do with Joe. Phase one is all about us. Why are we reacting?
So the first one is fantasy. Is that the object is fantasy? This is... Because I went through these 4 phases in the book. So one of them's fantasy, one of them's self-discovery, one of them's personal transformation, and the other one is what? Relationship transformation. And all these things must mean something and a way to react to them.
Well, I'll give you a shortcut version, okay?
Okay.
So when we discuss about phase one, it's all about you.
Okay,
the collective you.
Right.
Okay, it's all about us.
Right.
Okay. Really, we have fantasies about this person because we want to feel a certain way. We want our lives to be a certain way. It's all about us. Now, phase two, self-discovery, it starts to become about us and our new love interests. So in other words, now we start to realize, Joe's a real person. You know what I mean? He's got his own stuff. He's got qualities I like. He's got qualities I don't like. He's a real person, separate from me.
Not about
you. And he has his own dreams and his own needs and his own inks. So we start to separate out what am I projecting onto this person? Like, who do I need him to be, or who am I scared he's going to be, versus who he really is or who she really is, and then take a look at, okay, now I need to also know who I am. What gets me triggered? What gets me going? What gets me excited? So we separate all that out in phase two.
Okay, and then that's self-discovery.
That's self-discovery.
Okay, and personal transformation?
So personal transformation is when it actually starts to become a little bit more about the other person. In other words...
Oh, more than what you're doing.
You're less self-focused.
I see.
And what you do in phase three is that you not only understand who this person is, you also embrace and accept them for who they are.
Oh, that's where you have to say, no matter what that is, I accept it. And
Right.
This isn't just about love interest. Let's do relation transformation too, because that
Right.
is the two of you, right?
Exactly.
Finally, you're thinking about him and he's a person,
Right.
and I'm a part of what he's doing.
Exactly.
And so the personal, what's the last one? Relationship?
The relational transformation.
Right.
The relational transformation is what I call the ultimate prize.
Yes.
Because now the focus is on the relationship. Okay, so in other words, the relationship's needs come first.
Oh, I see.
The relationship has its own goals. The relationship has its own needs and traits and values.
Same two people. I mean, those two objects are together making a relationship.
Making a third, almost like a third entity.
Yeah.
And then, when you're in this relationship, you get to test all your decision and actions against the relationship's needs, not about your needs or the other person's needs. In other words, is it good for our relationship if I take a trip on our 10th anniversary?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Without my partner.
And he's
You know
going to
what I
feel
mean?
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's those kinds of things. You start to make decisions that are based on, you know, what are we creating here? What do we want?
One thing that happens, though, is we make those decisions within our mind, but sometimes our partners don't think that we're making the decision and surrendering in a way or helping the relationship.
So they, I mean, well, if
You know, like they don't know you've gone through this transition. I'm not going to take this trip because it's going to bother him. But he doesn't realize that. He's just going, oh, he doesn't pay any attention to what you're sacrificing, let's say.
Well, at that point, it shouldn't feel like a sacrifice. And two, it really shouldn't matter. It would matter if this person came back to you and he or she said, you know what, I don't feel like you care enough about the relationship. I feel like you put your needs first. At that point, then it opens up the dialogue to say, well, actually I do, because these are the kind of things that go into my thought process when I make decisions.
Right, you have to talk about the thought.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about a man and woman. It's about friendship relationships too, right?
It's about any relationship.
It's really difficult, though. It's hard work, and you say it's hard work in the book.
It's a commitment to a process. Like I tell people, a good relationship is not a destination. It's not like you can get there. Okay? A good relationship is a process. It's knowing how to nurture and care for your relationship that makes it a great relationship for you to live in.
Well, people come together in different ways. They don't always meet at the right place.
Right. I would say, you know, one of the things that creates maybe potential breakups or things where relationships don't come together is it could be the stuff with Joe and Sue, because they didn't have enough wherewithal to reflect before they acted or reacted. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's people, you know, somebody's ready to get into a very intimate relationship and another person really isn't interested in that. You know, you're in two different places.
Yeah, well, let's ask that question, because we always dream of this fantasy perfect relationship. And I guess you're dreaming of this fantasy relationship from your own point of view, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So there's always going to be conflicts, and what do you do with those conflicts?
Yeah, the goal is to talk the conflicts through. You know what I mean?
I mean, are they good or bad conflicts? They can be good, can't they?
Well, conflicts in and of themselves are just fine. Conflicts are just disagreements. They're just two different points of views or two different needs.
Yeah.
They become let's say, destructive, maybe that's the best word, when you are determined to make the other person's position wrong or make them wrong.
Right.
Okay, that's what's going to make a conflict go from good to bad. Okay, but if you approach it from a fact that, okay, this is what's important to me, this is what's important to him, and you know what, he's not wrong for wanting this, I'm not wrong for wanting this, then it's not about a power struggle. It's really about, okay, how do we come up with a really creative solution? You know, it's acceptable to both of us.
Well, I love this, the pathway to love, and I love the size. Did you have anything to do with the size? Because you can stick it in your pocket.
You know, I wanted a book that you could stick in your pocket and take it to the beach or take it to the pool or take it to bed.
It's great.
Either one.
Yeah, it's a great size and it's easy to read. It's really great.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being with us.
It's been great.
And we'll be right back with composer Miguel de Oliveira. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with composer Miguel de Oliveira, who was born and raised in Lisbon and went to school in Estoril and went to med school and went to jazz school and went to film school. And as he says, he doesn't see a pattern here. So we're going to have to find out why and how he became an award-nominated musician of feature films, short films, TV, and commercials after going to all those different schools. Hi, Miguel.
Hi, Joan.
It all started in med school, as they say. doctors want to be musicians.
Yes, I'm not the only case of the doctors, well, that were at school with me, that has tried to pursue a career as a composer, although most of them ended up being just hobbies. I realized that it was really my passion.
Why? Why do you think there's that connection between a doctor and a musician?
I don't know. I never tried to find the logic to it. Maybe it acts out as a stress relieving mechanism. The playing in a lot of my colleagues played in jazz bands. The jazz,
right,
the doctors that I met. So maybe all that interaction acts as a release valve for the stress of the daily life at the hospital.
Did you play an instrument?
Yes, while I was at university, I played in a couple of jazz bands. I played a bit of piano and soprano saxophone.
Oh, so you were already musical in a way.
Yes.
And where did the music take you? Did you quit school? Did you quit
No.
school?
I graduated and then specialized in dentistry and worked as a dentist for a while.
You did actually?
Yeah, in Lisbon and in London. So I worked as a dentist, and when I arrived in London, it was with the intent of joining a rock band. And I was still working as a dentist, and on the side, every now and then, I would have to stop all the clinical action and to go on tour with a band or record. But at some point, I noticed that if you don't cut your umbilical cord with a sort of a safe haven, especially a safe financial haven, you're never going to achieve what you really want.
Well, the problem is, you're right. As a dentist, you're financially stable.
Yes.
And as a musician, no matter how good you are, you're really not.
Exactly. So you can't have both, because otherwise you'll never have that hunger to develop your musical career as if you really need to take it somewhere.
What did you play?
I played cavaquinho, which is the grandfather of the ukulele. It's the ukulele. It was an instrument that was taken by a guy from the Madeira Islands into Hawaii, and then it became very popular there. And then obviously Elvis took it up, and he became world famous. But I played cavaquinho. Is a 4-stringed instrument, exactly like the ukulele. In this case, it has metal strings, and you play it strumming, or you can sort of near your chest.
Why closer?
Well, it's pretty small, so it's
small.
Yeah, it's a guitar about this big, so it's.
I see. Well, were there any musicians in your family?
No one in my family.
They were all
plays.
doctors.
Yeah. No, not even anyone. I mean, there's only 2 people that ever went to university. So.
Oh, so this was all totally new, and it was all inspired by your own. By your own willing to go somewhere and do something different. Talking about that instrument, I know you collect instruments.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about some of the instruments. And I wish that we had pictures of them or that you have them, but they're all very ethnic in origin.
Yes. I mean, I try to collect as many instruments as I can possibly to the despair of my wife, because they take a lot of room in the house. But I suppose they help. They help a lot when I'm writing a score for a documentary or a film that requires a quirky sound that people haven't heard before or people aren't very familiar with. So to try to run away from the traditional piano, guitar, trumpets, etc.
So you collect instruments that you actually use?
Yes, I try to learn a bit how to play them, and if I'm really in love with the sound that an instrument produces, I will then hire a musician who plays that instrument.
You can
to
find
come for
someone who plays those?
In London, like LA, you can find, be it a duduk or a dulcimer, you can find anyone to play them.
So what are some of them? A dulcimer is pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a duduk is small.
Yeah, an Armenian clarinet, and I've got the latest thing I've acquired. It's something that very few people know or have seen. It's called a bulbul tarang. It's a sort of, it's like a squared box. It has typewriter keys and guitar strings. So you pluck it and you press on the typewriter keys.
Typewriter keys?
Yeah, exactly, typewriter keys. They look like the original instrument must have been made but when someone had found a typewriter that some guy threw away, and he took the keys, put them on the box, and it has really an amazing sound. And that's the thing, you put one of these quirky instruments into your throw it into the mix when you're composing, and all of a sudden it helps come up with new ideas.
But something like that doesn't come from a particular country. Do you collect things from particular countries too?
Yes,
country specific?
Yes, sometimes I have to be true to the geography of the subject that I'm scoring about. So
say in South America, are there certain instruments that wouldn't be in a regular orchestra? Or
Yes. I mean, for instance, I've recently done a 4-part for PBS about Latin America, and I tried, at least in a few of the musical cues, to use instruments that were true to the region.
I watched some of the TV clips on your website, and there's funny sounds. Some of them don't even sound like they're musical sounds that you've used. How do you describe that kind of thing?
That could be more into the realm of sound design. I mean, sometimes you want a musical landscape that needs to be so inobtrusive. It needs to be so much in the background, but still be effective, that you have to sort of almost dilute the soundscapes, and so that nothing takes center stage. Yeah,
because it doesn't sound like music. It didn't sound like music, but I'm sure it was part of what you composed.
Yes.
The other thing that I noticed is there was a lot of percussion. I heard like claves and horns, separate and different horns, but with different kinds of sounds to me.
Yes, I mean, again, I try.
Do you write like that?
Yes, I sometimes try to explore the sort of, you could say, crazy techniques that musicians can use when playing their instruments, sort of extreme techniques. Again, to try to get something unusual out of them. I mean, you can ask someone to play a clarinet without a mouthpiece, or play the mouthpiece without a clarinet. So all this sort of crazy stuff.
Then you went back to school in 2007 and got what'd you get, a master's?
I got a master's degree in composing for film and TV.
And then you started working in film and TV.
Yes, more and more from then on. I've done maybe 50 hours of television.
Have you? You worked for the BBC?
BBC mostly, and Channel 4, yeah.
And Channel 4. How do you get those gigs? How did they find you?
It started by word of mouth. I mean, I did one that became very successful, and then the next week I had 2 people knocking on my door wanting scores, and then it spiraled, and now I think I'm booked until next February.
If you work for something like for a series, say, because I think you got some awards for some series that you were doing, and do you work with the director? How do you come up with the music?
Very closely with the director. I mean, it usually starts when they've finished shooting and they've started to edit. I come down to the edit suite and bring some ideas, and they start to try it against picture. And,
but it's all original.
Yes.
Have you ever worked on a piece where you've pulled music from other people?
No, I think the only time out of 50, out of those 50 hours of TV, only once for the Gates of Latin, or the Black in Latin America for PBS, I was asked to do a version of the American anthem on the mandolin, and that was the only time I've ever sort of did a cover of a piece that wasn't mine.
Did you actually play it?
Yeah.
Oh, you actually played it. But you spent 3 years before you really went into television work as an audio editor. What does that mean? Oh,
I was audio editor for Showreel magazine, but editor in the sense of a writer.
Editor. Oh, you were a writer.
As a writer, yeah.
I see. So you were.
So I wrote about film music, about equipment, and about software. So that allowed me to sort of get acquainted with that side of the industry, and know how to take all the gear and all the software to extremes, which is very helpful.
So is that a magazine just for musicians?
It was a magazine. It's no longer alive.
But was it just for musicians?
It was for media people, for everyone. For TV, for film people, for editors, for cinematographers. It had a section for each.
So have you written a script and then written the music for it? I mean, is there a film in your head?
I've got a couple of scripts that I would like to put into to get them to see the light of day at one point, and then maybe write the music or hire someone.
You've been in Los Angeles and you've worked here, you've worked in China. Do these places change your inspiration as far as, do they?
Yeah, especially when I come back, because I suppose a lot of the stuff would have soaked in, and then as I get to London and then to my studio, I realize that a lot of it comes out straight away, and I get loads of ideas, and which is good because you put a lot of them on the shelf when you're not writing for a specific purpose.
Well, what do you do? How do you do that?
I mean, you just come up with stuff, and you try to sort of have a good filing system so that you know what you've written, and then you put them away. And when the famous writer's block comes about, because everyone has that, you have a drawer full of stuff that you haven't used yet, so you can easily pick a piece and then develop it.
And what were you doing in China?
I was invited by an institution in London to go and do a creative residency, which meant collaborating with Chinese composers, and so that we could influence each other and learn.
How long were you there?
It was 7 days.
Oh, it was. And so did you find any new instruments there that you didn't know about?
I already knew quite a few Chinese instruments, but it was an interesting interaction.
So when you actually see something on the screen, you go down and you work with the director. Do you have to work with anyone else? Are you thinking of working with anyone else at the time?
The editors have a lot of say in certain projects. So
I think that's where I was getting confused, because I thought as a sound editor, not editor writing.
No. The picture editor has a lot of say, because he's the one cutting down sequences. So he might ask me for a piece to give him an idea of rhythm, as let's say he's cutting a battle sequence.
Right.
For instance, he would like ideally to have something that I've already written, so that the pictures can move in synchronization with the music and not the other way around.
Because I saw this airplane coming down, and so you just see the airplane coming and then you write the music to go with that?
Yes, in that case, I think when he cut that sequence, I had already written as what's called a mock-up of the piece, so that by the time the editor cut everything, and by the time they finished, I could then use my piece, write everything out on paper for an orchestra, go and record it with an orchestra at exactly the same pace as that demo, so that everything would fit nicely.
And as a composer, do you conduct as well?
I can, but time is too precious on those occasions, and I'd rather sit in the control room and work as a producer of the recording rather than a conductor. And there are people who can do it much better than me. So.
Was it as creative as you thought when you had this passion to go into music? Did it turn out to be the passion you loved?
It is, and more. I think it came out in spades. It can be incredibly rewarding, and when you have directors saying you've saved my film, or
oh, you saved my film, isn't that great? Instead of you filled my teeth, that's good too.
Yeah, it is. It can be absolutely fabulous.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Me.
And thank you for watching the show today. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com and 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. Bye.